Excellent. At this time, Madam Chair, obviously due to our continued efforts with COVID-19, we are holding a special virtual meeting today. We have our preamble. I didn't know if you wanted to read that or if you'd like for me to read that today.
You can read it for us today, David.
Okay. All right. The governor has issued executive orders requiring individuals to remain in their homes except for certain activities, closing many businesses to the public and prohibiting any gatherings which do not comply with its terms. Because of the risk to the public that would arise from continued in-person meetings, pursuant to NCGS 166A-19.24, the city is converting Raleigh Transit Authority meetings to a remote electronic format for the duration of the state of emergency. So again, that is the reason for our virtual meeting today. With that, I would remind everyone to make sure that you are on mute if you're not talking. The chair will recognize individuals. I would encourage individuals to maybe hold their hand at their shoulder. Sometimes if you're holding your hand to the side, somebody can't see it. And certainly the chair will recognize you as appropriate. Other than that, I think that you all are aware of our processes. Certainly, we do have a quorum today. We do have Ms. Sarah Prado, which is an alternate today. So she will not be acting as a voting member today, but she will be participating in all deliberations or other discussions as may be appropriate. So I wanted to just make you aware of that. We will also be doing a roll call for any votes. There are a couple of votes that we did not think would be necessary today, but we may give you an option to, and that's due to our upcoming summer meeting schedule. So certainly there may be a couple of things that may require a roll call and a vote. With that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to you to start the meeting. I do appreciate everybody's time and attention today on just those preliminary matters. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call this meeting to order at 3:44 on Wednesday, June 17th. We'll start by doing a quick roll call. Nathan Spencer.
Here.
Karen Ridge.
Here.
Michael Stevenson.
Here.
Christopher Jones. Daniel Coleman.
Here.
Morris Cook.
Here.
Brian Burnett. I think Brian was here. Brian? Okay. Joshua Gill. Sarah Prado. Can you all hear me?
I can. Can Sarah hear us?
I don't think she can hear us, but I see that she's here.
He says that he's on mute and can't unmute himself.
Who said that?
Brian Burnett said that he's on mute and can't unmute himself.
Okay. I do see that Brian is here. I also see that Sarah is here. Robert Owens.
Here.
Thank you. And do we have any city council liaisons present?
Hey, Sarah, that's the meeting.
Okay. And Talulupe Omokaye, I will consider myself present as well. All right, so first item, do we have any revisions or additions to today's agenda?
Madam Chair, all I would like to do is note two items which we will request potential vote on. One is item 2D, the Southern and Western Corridors Amendment. And then the other one would actually be potentially approving the service improvements related to Route 20, but that is not mandatory today, but may be convenient for the board depending upon how you would like to proceed. Again, that is not mandatory. That would depend on another decision related to whether you would want to meet in July. So we can discuss that at that appropriate time.
Okay, do you want to move the Southern and Western Corridor Amendment conversation up to an action item and discuss it before we get into the staff items? The staff information items? I can't hear you, I'm sorry. I can't hear you, David. I can't hear anybody. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Hear they come.
Yes.
I can hear you now. I don't know what's happening. Hello?
Is David talking? Because I can't. Yeah.
He's talking, but yeah, I can't hear him.
I'll text.
From the podium. I can hear everybody else fine.
Okay, good. I kept thinking it was me. So you all I can hear you all. We just can't hear him. Okay.
Exactly.
Texting Andrea.
Hi, can any of you hear me? This is Andrea.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
If they can hear me, I can hear me.
All right, Madam Chair, we can go ahead and get volume 1.2 going here.
All right. So the question was, did you want to move up the Southern and Western Corridor Amendment as an action item before we get into talking about the staff information items?
I would like them as action items. However, because of our presentation sequence, because we have one large presentation that goes through each item in order, it may be easier if we just address them as action items, if appropriate, as we go through the presentation.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Since we're just now starting, this is Michael Stevenson. I'm going to have to excuse myself. I have a conflict, and maybe one of the alternates could vote in my place if we need that for a quorum.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I know you said you had a conflict, so I appreciate you chiming in.
If I can rejoin later, I'll try to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's jump into it. Let's not waste any time. We're creeping up on 4 o'clock. Do we want to just go ahead and address any public comments now? Do we happen to have any public comments?
All right, so we have no public comments to share today regarding Route 20 or any general public comments today.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's jump into it with the first item, the service equity report for Route 20 Garner, 21 Raleigh.
All right, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. David Walker. He's going to run through the presentation very quickly regarding these route improvements. Thank you.
Good afternoon, David Walker in the Department of Transportation and Transit Division.
Oh, David.
So first item is to review the service equity report that was created for the Garner and number 20 Garner and 21 Raleigh routes. As you're aware, we've been through quite a bit of history on these two routes, and we had requested a public hearing for today. However, that public hearing was canceled due to a review of our policy, and we realized that it really wasn't required. Public hearings are only required if it's a service reduction or if we're increasing our fare, and obviously we're not doing that on either one of these two routes. So we will be reviewing this equity report and then later the comments that we have received through all of our public engagement efforts.
All right, thank you, David.
So equity reports are required as per Title VI regulations in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Also for transit providers with 50 or more vehicles in its fixed route service and are located in large urbanized areas, which we do meet both of those qualifications. And the equity analysis is to evaluate potential impacts of proposed service changes on minority and low-income populations separately. As you're aware, on the Garner 20 route, we are proposing to increase our frequencies from hourly service Monday through Friday to service operating every 30 minutes from downtown Raleigh. And there is a loop at the end of the line, and the additional route will operate in a clockwise direction versus the new route operating in a counterclockwise direction. So we'll provide bi-directional service on that loop, which offers better service to the citizens if they're just trying to travel around on the loop. Similarly, on the Raleigh number 21 route, this route does have some 30-minute peak service Monday through Friday, but the rest of the time it's operating hourly. And we're proposing to move this service to every 30 minutes for all hours up until 7 p.m. Monday through Sunday, and it would remain hourly service after 7 p.m. On both weekends and weekdays. But the weekend service and the weekday service through 7 would be bumped up to every 30 minutes. So the analysis, what it shows is that if you look at the far right column first, our system-wide averages for minority population for the entire Go Raleigh system, we serve a population that is 51% minority. The Garner service serves a population that is 78% minority, and the Raleigh service provides service to a population that is 58% minority. Therefore, both of these proposed service increases will be providing better service to a higher percentage minority population than the balance of the Go Raleigh system. Similarly, on the low income percentage, our system-wide average is 30% low income, and for the Garner service, it's 44% low income and 38% low income on the Raleigh route. So again, both of those routes serve a higher percentage of low-income residents than the entire Go Raleigh system. And the main line in this entire report on page 12 shows that this analysis shows that there are no disparate impacts to minority populations or disproportionate burdens to low-income populations. So this is a requested action to receive as information and consider for endorsement ahead of the vote for proposed service changes. So if you did want to vote today, you could. The depending upon whether or not you wanted to vote later on the actual service changes themselves. So with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
David, this is Karen Ringe. I have a question. Based on the data, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's very low, Karen.
Okay. Based on the data that you have, can you make the statement and the conclusion that this has a positive impact on minority and low-income populations, or is that not the purpose of this study?
Well, the study doesn't intentionally look to see if there is a positive impact, but that is, in theory, what's happening. We are serving a higher percentage of low-income and minority population on these two routes than what we do for the entire system. And since these two routes are receiving increased frequencies throughout the day, in theory, you could say that if that's how you wanted to look at it.
Are we seeing increased ridership on these routes? Is that why we're increasing the frequency?
The Carroll Lee route pre-pandemic was seeing ridership in the upper 50s to 60 passengers per hour. It's still doing very well. It's seeing close to 35 passengers per hour during the pandemic. The Garner service was actually scaled back quite a bit while we went to a reduced level of service. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going on there. But through our FY20 funding through the Wake Transit Plan, we actually received enough money to do this second implementation of service. It was some service that was requested by the town of Garner, by the citizens and the riders of the route. We actually received a letter today that I was going to talk about a little bit later. We received a letter from Habitat for Humanity, who has several project sites, both existing and future, along this route, and it will have a huge impact to their customers in the Habitat community.
Okay. Well, I actually think that are there any questions from the board on that may stop us from going ahead and voting now on these routes? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I think it's a great recommendation, and I would motion.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded to accept the new route suggestions for increased frequency for the Route 20 Garner and Route 20 Carroll Lee. All right, are you all ready for the question?
Just very briefly, if I may.
Yes.
This specific item is for approval of the service equity analysis. So there'll really be a two-step process. We need to endorse this service equity analysis that shows no disparate impacts on low-income or minority populations. That would be first. And then I'll talk about, on the next item, is a quick review of our comments received to date. And then if you wanted to vote on the proposed changes, it would be appropriate at that time. Okay. So this vote would be to approve the service equity analysis.
All right. We would just need a new motion in a second.
All right. I motion for the service equity analysis approval.
I second that.
All right. So it's been moved and properly seconded. We're going to go through the roster. I'll call each of your names, and then you vote yay or nay at that point. Aye or nay at that point. All right. Nathan Spencer.
Aye.
Karen Ridge.
Aye.
Michael Stevenson. Oh, he's gone. Daniel Coleman. Daniel Coleman, you're muted, I think, Danny.
Aye.
Thank you. Morris Cook. No problem.
Aye.
Brian Burnett.
Aye.
And do we need Sarah to vote right now also? think we still have quorum, right?
You still have a quorum.
Yeah, and I, Tallulah Pay, I'm okay, vote aye as well. So it's been moved and properly seconded, and that the motion passes, that we accept the equity analysis for increased route frequency for 21, Raleigh 21.
Thank you.
My agenda go. All right. So the second item that we're discussing is the comments and review for service improvements for Route 20 Garner and Route 21 Carroll. And that's also David Walker.
Yes, and I would like to give credit to Morgan Simmons on my staff. She actually put both of these reports together. I'm just here presenting on her behalf.
Thank you, Morgan.
So the public comment period was open for approximately 30 days. We opened it immediately after the May Transit Authority board meeting, and it closes today. Again, just a quick review. Increasing the service frequencies to every 30 minutes on both of these routes, and the service equity analysis that you just endorsed shows no disparate impacts on the minority and low-income population. So we've done quite a bit of public engagement over the last 6 months for both of these services. Pre-pandemic, we did multiple pop-ups throughout Garner and Raleigh, and we did about 8 different presentations and table setups through community events and different public meetings, presenting and talking about the services for both of these routes. Since the May meeting, we have set up a project page on the Go Raleigh website. We've created a survey, which I'll talk about the data that we've received so far in just a few minutes. We sent out email blasts to over 5,200 subscribers on our subscription list, newspaper ads, as you can see, social media posts, and we've got placards up on the buses talking about these service increases. What this next slide does is talk about a high-level review of all the comments that we have received to date. And, you know, we had the 3 opportunities for outreach by email, telephone calls, and the survey through publicinput.com available for citizens to engage. As of June the 3rd, and this was prepared for our meeting last week, and we had to have an early cutoff date. I do have some updated data that I can provide for you. But we had a total of 2 emails and social media comments, and we had received 34 survey responses from the publicinput.com site. From those surveys and responses, 84% of the respondents for the Garner service were in favor of the proposed changes, and 80% of the respondents were in favor of the Carroll changes. And the other biggest piece of information or respondents were just either neutral to either option, so they didn't say they didn't like it. They were just neutral, possibly because they don't ride those routes.
Can I ask a question? What were some of the reasons why people gave for not being in favor of it?
Most of the ones that said not in favor, or well, I honestly, I'm not sure if there were actual comments for those not in favor. Most of the comments that were neutral to either option, if they did leave a comment, they just said that it wasn't really applicable to them because they didn't ride that service, but they were filling out the survey.
Thank you.
I think the small percentages, based on the total number of responses that we have, it was probably less than 5 people that may have responded they didn't want to increase the service. So as of 1 o'clock today, the percentages remain pretty much the same for the Garner service. 84% agreed, to the increase in service. And on the Raleigh route, it actually dropped just a little bit down to 76% agreed to the service changes, but the up column was again on the neutral to either option. So the overwhelming majority for both still were in favor of the proposed changes to increase the frequencies to every 30 minutes. And as I mentioned earlier, we did see a fairly lengthy email today from Habitat for Humanity. They do have quite a few locations on the Garner route that the increased frequencies will be supporting. And so they were very much in favor of these changes to the Garner service. All right, so next steps would be if you wanted to vote on this today, you can, since we're not having the public hearing, and the overwhelming majority of comments have been supportive of both service increases for Garner and Raleigh, the routes on those two routes. And our anticipated start date would be sometime this fall, probably in the September area. And with that, I'll be glad to take any additional questions.
This is Nathan Spencer. I don't have a question, more a comment. I think I mentioned this in past meetings. The work that Morgan has done with regards to Habitat and the amount of building that Habitat is doing for affordability, for housing affordability in Garner and Southern Raleigh is amazing. The fact that we have Habitat and Morgan as a planner for Go Raleigh thinking ahead, planning for the next couple of years is going to be really impactful and actually shows that we're actually trying to do real affordable transit and affordable housing for people. So I commend that, and I think this is really good.
I do as well. I think that this is a great increase. I think if that route is necessary, and I think especially going into Garner, that area is building rapidly. So there'll eventually be more ridership necessary on that route. So I appreciate us getting ahead of it and making sure that it's equitable to everyone. So if you all would like to vote on this now, so we can go ahead and get this taken care of in the event that we do not have a meeting going forward in July, would anybody like to make the motion to accept these route adjustments?
I move that we accept these route changes.
All right, do we get a second? Karen has moved to accept the route changes.
I'll second.
All right, Brian is seconding the motion. All right, so it's been moved and properly seconded. I will read through the roster. Please state aye or nay if you are voting for or against the motion. All right, Nathan Spencer.
Aye.
Karen Ridge. Ringe. I'm sorry, Karen.
I vote yes.
Okay. Daniel Coleman. You have to unmute yourself and vote, Daniel. Can someone unmute him for him?
All right, I vote in favor of.
All right, thank you. I can hear you, yes, thank you. Morris Cook.
Aye.
Brian Burnett.
Aye.
And Talulupe Omokaya, I vote aye as well. So it's been moved and properly seconded. The motion is passed for us to accept the increased frequency of route changes for Route 20 Garner and 21 Raleigh.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Daniel Coleman.
Muting me to stop muting me, putting me to sleep.
I'm sorry?
Ask whoever's been muting me to stop muting me.
Oh, okay. And it was requesting that he no longer be muted. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to the next item. So that has passed, and the next item is the CARES Act funding presentation, and that is with David Eman.
All right, we'll go ahead and bring that up, and we can get started on that. We've had this discussion a few times, but just wanted to pretty much wrap this up as we're going to be moving forward pretty quickly over the next 60 days to secure our CARES Act funding. Just a recap, there was a $25 billion funding package nationally appropriated to transit across the U.S. By Congress. Our urbanized area received about $36 million, and the city of Raleigh's allocation of that was right at $25 million. About $1.3 million of that is actually slated for improvements around NC State University, as that allocation does include their ridership and considers their bus miles as well as part of that overall calculation to distribute funds. So we'll be working with our partners in order to find appropriate projects for those funds. And when I say appropriate projects, generally that would be capital, shelters, things of that nature. Some of the uses that we're going to be looking at very broadly within our grant, certainly we'll be looking at planning funds, capital investments, as well as operating. We know that our operating has been impacted this physical year, FY20. We know that we will have impacts in fiscal year 21, which is right around the corner starting July 1. And quite honestly, we've set aside a amount of funding to help us in FY22. As even when we look out 12 to 18 months, we know that there could still be some residual impacts. We would like to think that everything by that time would certainly be completely back to normal. And I'll think positive and just say that, that's our goal, for everything to be normal in 12 to 18 months. However, if that is not the case, we have put aside funds for FY22 to help us out. I would say that as we approach this funding package with our CARES Act funds, flexibility is the overarching word to think about as we've developed this grant and this strategy. What we've wanted to do is take care of immediate needs, take care of the short-term needs that we know are going to be there, but we've also developed this grant strategy in a way that can advance our projects through whether it's City of Raleigh or Wake Transit, and keep us on schedule in many ways. And that's a very fortunate, opportunity for us. But again, if things change, we do have flexibility to change as those conditions change.
David.
Yes.
The $11 million gap in the Raleigh urbanized area.
I'm sorry. When you address, you have to announce yourself for the record.
Daniel Coleman. Where did the $11 million go between the Raleigh urbanized allocation amount and then the Raleigh allocation by capital? Where did the $11 million go?
Okay, so the overall urbanized area allocation, just like our formula funds that come in annually, goes to a number of transit agencies. We use the same formula locally that Congress uses to distribute the funds nationally. But we take that same formula and break it down to an MPO level. So a portion of the funds go to City of Raleigh, Go Raleigh. A portion of the funds go to Go Cary. A portion of the funds go to Go Triangle. And a portion of the funds go to Wake County Transit or Tracks, which is now Go Wake.
What does the Go Raleigh get out of the 36 points?
Okay, I didn't hear your entire question there. I think the question was, what did Go Raleigh,
What is of the 36 million or the 25 million? I don't care which bucket you take from. What does Go Raleigh get? What do we get?
okay, so the $25 million allocation, the 25.3, that is Go Raleigh, City of Raleigh's allocation from the CARES Act funds from our urbanized area. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I keep getting muted, so I apologize. Thank you.
David, this is Karen Ringe. I have a question.
Okay.
So is this essential, as in reviewing the agenda for the meeting, looking at when we went fare free, obviously we're losing sizable revenue. And so is this funding really essentially intended to help fill that gap?
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Range, you were really faint there.
I don't know how to increase my volume any more than I've been trying all my little tricks. I'll just talk louder. Is this federal funds intended to help replace the lost revenue because we are going fare free? Obviously, we're losing significant revenue because we're doing that.
So there is somewhat of a nuance there that the CARES Act funds cannot be used to replace revenue. So you can't take the CARES Act funds and just plug it into your revenue line item to fulfill lost revenue. However, it's somewhat of an accounting strategy. If because of lost revenue you have an increased deficit at the end of the year, then CARES Act funds can be used to cover that deficit. So again, as we move forward with our suspended fares and we recognize that loss, once we calculate our net deficit against all other revenues, then the CARES Act can be used to make up that difference.
Can I ask, when Karen is finished, ask a question?
Okay.
If what's more efficient, let's put people on furloughs and let them get their money, unemployment insurance, or to put them on fees and let them take that money down from the care. What works best for us?
So you were breaking up there on me a little bit, but it sounded like you were asking a question regarding several, certain companies use different strategies as it relates to employment of employees. Certainly, we worked with our contractors very early in this process to make sure that our contracts allowed us to keep our employees whole during this process. As you're aware, we're back to normal service now and have been for a while with Go Raleigh. So we're not seeing any of those reductions in force or labor, in service hours that would result in some type of reduction. And in the interim there, the CARES Act can be used to cover that delta that we were experiencing in order to keep everybody whole. Everyone was continuing to work, even though maybe at a little bit lower level. But we were able, again, to make sure that everyone did stay whole through that. And that was accomplished for our fixed route Go Raleigh system as well as for our Go Raleigh Access paratransit program. Our drivers are very important, obviously. They cannot be replaced easily. And we did not want to what we view as a short-term event to impact long-term labor availability. And just employees, quite honestly, obviously during this time frame, that would have been a very tough decision to make. I'm glad we didn't have to make a decision like that.
But this money then it goes not to the City of Raleigh employees, but to our contractors' employees, in this case, Trans employees.
So that does cover all of the drivers and mechanics that were impacted during this time period. That is correct.
Thank you.
David, this is Nathan Spencer. I'd like to see a breakdown or a budget for the CARES Act money, and at least proposed on what you plan to do. The reason being is I'm looking at a tweet that just came out today regarding the transportation budget for North Carolina that just came out of committee, and there are major cuts. So I want to make sure I know we're keeping some money for FY21 and FY22, but in as much as I will admit that I love to build anything that we can build, we may be needing reserve more than we had hoped.
I second that idea, Nathan. That's Daniel Coleman.
All right. So again, yeah, we can certainly provide detail on that. I think that the strategy that we have for the grant is that we have identified a number of operating opportunities, funds for FY 20, 21, and 22. As well as capital projects. Again, we don't have a crystal ball, so we've kind of hedged all of our bets. If we were playing the birthday game at the state fair, we just put a quarter on every birthday. So we just made sure that we were covered under every possible scenario.
But we can get a copy of the budget for how those funds are going to be applied, though, correct?
Yes. So again, we do not have all of the budgets associated with those funds actually adopted because they are future year. But what the grant will do is set aside those funds. So what we can do is we can provide you with a breakdown of the scopes of the grant along with the dollar amounts so that you'll see exactly what's there.
Are you saying there's no forecast to how the funds are going to be used?
That is correct.
So we're asking for funds just in case because we see that we have to cover personnel with our lack of operations and things like that. Is that what you're?
That is correct. So we're using our $23 million in CARES Act funds to advance a number of potential capital projects that may have been delayed, as well as we're setting aside operating funds for realized losses in FY20, for projected losses in revenue in FY21, and potential losses of revenue in 22. If those losses are not realized, we'll still have those scopes for those capital items that we can advance. If for some reason we were to see losses greater than we anticipated, then we could then delay some of those capital projects and bring those capital dollars back into the operating side of the grant and also be covered.
Right. I'm just saying, are we going to have access to know which capital projects the funds are going towards, how much is going towards them?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions, you guys, as far as the CARES funding, CARES Act funding?
Just real quick there, you can see some of the things that we just talked about is how it can be used. It is 100% federal, it requires no local match. While it does not have an expiration period, the FTA has requested that we obligate these funds as soon as possible, and that's why we need to get this grant done, this summer, if at all possible. Certainly, they want us to have these funds obligated by the end of the calendar year.
For a minute. Hey, can you defer this whole matter to the Finance Committee? We don't have Michael here. This really seems to be the stuff that the Finance Committee should deep dive into for the board. So if you consider that a logical a request on my part, I'd appreciate it.
We certainly can.
Can you go back to the previous slide, please? I'm sorry.
That's me.
So these are the capital projects, but we can bring those to committee with amounts and the scopes once we do get that settled into our Federal Transit Administration grant.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to see them. I didn't have a chance to see them when they first came up.
Sorry.
All right, thank you.
All right, so that wraps that up. But again, we did want to bring you up to speed on where we are in that process, and certainly, if you'd like to refer that to committee, that's up to the body. But we would certainly welcome any further discussions regarding the use and our flexibility as we move forward.
All right, thank you. I would like to suggest that Finance Committee, as we progress in this process, that the Finance Committee is involved and at least definitely kept abreast of some of our ideas for the usage of the funding. All right, so the next item on our agenda is also it's an action item also. It's the Southern Western Corridors Amendment, and that is with Mila.
That's correct. So Ms. Mila Vega is here today, and she's going to provide us an overview of our amendment in order to advance the Western and Southern corridors. We have done some preliminary work with these jurisdictions, and so we're trying to get these projects underway as they are still really in a conceptual stage, and Mila will kind of go more into detail on that. But thank you.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon. I have a brief presentation for you, and while Andrew's pulling it up, I just want to kind of cue it in. So the amendment that I will be talking to you about covers about 4 or 5 months from notice to proceed. So this work will be covering us through about October of this year. And the main purpose of this work is to make sure that Southern and Western corridors are ready for the federal process, as well as to make sure that our municipal partners, Town of Cary and Town of Garner, are also well educated about the work that we will be implementing, and we all move into the federal process with a full understanding of requirements and necessary milestones to get the project to future potential grant and construction. So this is a quick overview of the timeline from the RFQ issue date. As you know, we went through the procurement in we started in 2018 and completed the procurement in 2019. The procurement was completed with a selection of WSP for 0 to 30% design for all 4 BRT corridors within the Wake Transit Plan. So it's 0 to 30% design, environmental work, and also transit-oriented development work that you all know as equitable development around transit. So WSP has been working on equitable development around transit. They have been working on New Bern corridor that is wrapping up, and now they need to start gearing up for Southern and Western corridor to stay on track and to stay on the schedule that was communicated to the partners, Wake Transit Plan partners, to the Federal Transit Administration, the council, as well as this board and the public. Before we jump into design and environmental work, we are requesting a limited notice to proceed that will prepare us for the federal process and educate our partners. Next slide, please. These are some of the additional highlights that will be included in the limited notice to proceed. As I said, it will take us approximately through October of this year, and we will be working on small starts applications for the project to get into the federal pipeline. We will be working on educational workshops for our municipal partners, again, to make sure that we are all familiar with the federal process at this point, because we went through this already with New Bern, but we want to make sure that the Town of Garner and Town of Cary staff, they feel comfortable and confident that they understand all the details of the requirements. We also will be holding monthly meetings with our partners and stakeholders like NCDOT to make sure that we have ongoing open communication and we can address various components of the project development in a timely manner. This will also include a public engagement component. Most likely it will be a virtual in a virtual environment, but we are building in some flexibility that will allow us to do a virtual meeting and supplement it with smaller scale pop-ups, because we assume people will not be very comfortable with large gatherings, even if they are allowed and restrictions are listed. So we're just trying to be as flexible as possible while still providing that opportunity to engage. And
are you coordinating this public engagement with Karen? What's the name of your committee, Karen? I don't want to media, public relations.
Marketing.
Marketing.
Can you repeat the question, please?
I was just asking Mila, was she engaging the public engagement activities, especially in light of the pandemic situation that we're in, with Karen and her subcommittee? Do y'all work closely together?
First,
Karen?
Danny, we have.
Oh, yes. So we have not, we did not develop a detailed public engagement plan. I think, and can you please state your name, just who asked the question, just so the public knows?
Daniel Cole asked.
Thank you.
Karen, give me an answer, but her volume is.
Yes, we will be working with the marketing committee. We do have, this is just a task right now in a limited scope, but before we go out to the public, we'll certainly work with our partners. We also need to make sure that public engagement is seamless. We are working on a seamless kind of combined public engagement for various components of BRT and BRT-related activities, because we know that was one of the recommendations of this board, to make sure that we are not developing separate meetings. But once we have that plan and we have approach, we will be communicating to the marketing committee. Yes.
Mila, the reason I asked that, the city released their whole East Raleigh area plan update, and they had a survey in there, and then several of the survey questions dealt BRT along New Bern Avenue corridor. And for all the discussions last summer where you would get in front of council and all of us and say that there was this big hue and cry from the public that they wanted transit and wanted it now, transit did not become, and it was not a major issue in the most current survey done along the downtown section of the BRT corridor. So that's why I'm asking Karen, is her crowd looking at how this data is collected? This data, when it is collected by other parts of the city, don't reflect the data that this department is sharing sometimes. Daniel.
Yeah, Mr. Coleman, this is David Eatman. We are aware of the survey that came back. Transit was kind of in the middle of the pack under a lot of the scenarios or things that were viewed by the community. I think that that survey or that stretch of New Bern Avenue covered the south side, certainly between East Street all the way to Tarboro Road. So, a pretty significant portion there. So we certainly are aware of that, and we will be working with the marketing committee. We're going to have very robust public participation. I don't want to take up any more of Mila's time, but I did want to let you know we did look at the survey and see all of the data there, and we'll be taking that into consideration and appreciate you bringing that forward and making sure that we're aware. So thank you.
I have a quick question. To Mila, when you say that we're doing public engagement, we're going to do a lot of it virtually, there's a major technological divide. So how are we saying that we're going to, if we already had a problem with the last meetings that we had, not actually having a lot of people who are being affected by the New Bern Avenue BRT at our community meetings or pop-ups. So those same people are going to have that problem because we weren't doing a great job reaching out to them to let them know in advance of what was going on. So how are they going to actually be able to have their voices heard for these other corridors virtually if they don't have access to the resources to do that?
So we're definitely talking about that. This is one of the main areas of focus, understanding that we need to, whatever engagement tool that we come up with needs to be accessible to everyone. So we are working on some options with the consultant, with WSP and HNTB, and we will be bringing some ideas back to the marketing committee before we, so this way you can review it and you can feel comfortable with our approach before we go out to the public. But obviously some of the things that we can do are mail surveys, paper surveys, even publish a phone number and people can participate via phone, like a regular phone. But we'll be discussing more at the marketing before we go out.
Well, Advanced Carolina is holding a virtual town hall meeting in August, and a lot of the community engagement groups in the city are going to participate because of the diverse subject matters that virtual conference hall is going to cover. And I'm going to suggest to you and to Karen that you participate in that thing as much as you can. I'll send the link to both of you. But this engagement has to be broader sense, so we don't find ourselves with bad data acting on it and building out things that are being.
I have a question and a comment. First of all, can you hear me any better?
I'm sorry, can I just remind whoever is speaking, because the public cannot see you, they can only see the screen, the PowerPoint presentation. Can you please state your name?
This is Karen Ringe. This is Karen Ringe, and I'm hoping you can hear me a little bit better. My question is regarding the public engagement activities. I know that the city decided to hire the consultant HNTB to do BRT outreach. Was that only for New Bern Avenue? Because I thought they were also going to be working on some of the other BRT corridors doing similar public engagement, and it seems like there ought to be some coordination about that.
Karen, you are correct 100%. So we do have HNTB, and they will be doing public engagement for New Bern final design as well as system standards. So again, that's what I was trying to kind of talk about. We need to develop a process that will take all of these different parallel tracks and all of these different projects that WSP is leading HNTB and make sure that the public sees one consolidated, seamless public engagement process. So yes, we will be engaging HNTB and their team that you've met virtually.
Well, wouldn't it make more sense just to have one consultant do all of the public engagement for all of the corridors?
Because WSP will be working on 0 to 30% design, they will be producing materials like boards and presentations, but then we can wrap it into the larger process.
So what's the other organization doing if they're doing that? Are we paying two organizations to do the same thing?
They're not doing the same thing. They're producing different materials. HNTB will be at the front because they are working on system standards. They are taking New Bern to final design. So these are very prominent tasks. WSP will be providing additional support in the background with developing boards and materials and presentations for their projects. We will take those materials and wrap it into the platform that HNTB will help us establish.
If I'm not, this is Daniel Coleman, Mila. This contract amendment was approved yesterday at the council. Even though you bring us as if you're making a recommendation to us to approve it, was it not?
Yes, it was. And the way it was originally scheduled, RTA board was supposed to review the limited scope first, and then, a week or a little bit, about a week later, we would go to council. Because we ran into technical difficulties and the item was already on the council agenda, published, we didn't pull it because then it would really set us back another 2 months. So that's why we are talking about it today at the special meeting.
Madam Chair,
Why are you all having us? Yeah, we're not, like, why are y'all having us? So this is not an action item. This is a moot point, and you all are just informing us of what you all have already done.
right.
But we were supposed to have a meeting last week.
I understand, but the point is, if we have an RTA and part of our job is to approve these things before they move on to the council for approval, then it should have been removed from the council's agenda. It shouldn't have been that the council then votes on it and then they talk to us about it like we're voting on something that's already done. This feels very similar to the last meeting we had where they kept throwing things in front of us and telling us we didn't have time to think about it. We just had to vote yay on it. So, like, please don't waste our time, right? We're on quarantine. We're all at home. Everybody's stressed out going through different things. This meeting could be shorter. It's already done. You could just notify us of it. Don't act like we have more power here to do something than we actually have to do if you all already moved forward with it. I mean,
Madam Chair, this is David Eatman.
Hello?
Yes, this is David. I was just going to respond, but I didn't know if you were finished.
I'm done.
All right. So that is correct. The item did go to council, as we did not pull that at that time because it had already been published. Again, due to the technical difficulties last week, we certainly don't view your approval of this item as a second thought. Certainly it's important. If there's things that we need to think about, if there's things in the scope that we need to think about from a large overarching thought process. Again, it sounds like communications and public outreach is an important element there. Those are the types of activities that and input that we really, really need. So again, our apologies on that. Just because of the timing in council, they will meet again in July. I believe it's July 7th. Potentially, I believe that's the first date in July. And then they won't meet again until the third Tuesday in August. So they've got a very long extended break coming as well. So again, our apologies. We always try to limit those types of activities there. But I did want to let you know that. Thank you.
So how many things do we wind up voting on that we don't really need to?
I would say that everything that we request you to vote on, we need you to vote on.
Okay. We wrapping? Is that the end of the presentation?
I think I have one more slide. Next slide. So this is the summary of what the amendment will do. Staff recommends this contract amendment that will allow WSP to advance work on the southern and western corridors. The fee is not to exceed $500,000, and it was on the consent agenda at the June 16th meeting. That is all I have for you. Karen, you on mute.
Karen Ringe again. Mila, would it be possible to set up a meeting with WSP and the HNTB subcontractors at some point to have a presentation to our marketing committee meeting about what their plans are for public outreach As Tululipe pointed out, we obviously have a lot of new constraints, as you well know, for reaching out to the public. And I know we haven't had any committee meetings since we've gone into sheltering for COVID. So I guess this is really a question for Andrea Epstein, if we can at some point set up a meeting with the marketing committee to go over that, that would be great.
Karen, I think it was a little bit difficult to hear, but I think you requested a presentation from WSP and HNTB to the marketing committee. And we can certainly accommodate that. Once we have them under contract to do this work, we will request to develop the presentation and review the approach with you, and then you can provide your comments.
Thank you.
Are there any other?
Thank you for your presentation, Nina. All right, looks like David, do you have any staff update items for us?
Yeah, we did want to run through some staff update items. Again, we would certainly like your endorsement of us moving forward with the item, the Western Boulevard and the Southern Corridor. However, if you do not, then that's okay. We will certainly be bringing that back to you in many forms in the coming meetings, and we'll make sure that we get that over to the marketing committee immediately.
Thank you. I'd rather we endorse it when it matters, since it's already a point that's passed. There's no point in us wasting just for the formality of it to endorse it, in my opinion. But if the board wants to, that's just my opinion. I make a motion that we don't endorse it. If I have a second.
Right, because it's already passed, right?
Yeah, so there's no, I mean.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to substitute motion. This is, I'd like to move that report that Mila gave again goes to the Finance Committee for review. And even though our authority has been usurped, so to speak, in this whole deal, we can still go through the formalities that we should have gone through. Finance Committee give a report back to the board. The board take a vote one way or another on position because of a Finance Committee rather than recommendation from staff without going to a Finance Committee. Either we are going to function as a board as we should, or we're not. I'm a strong advocate that board members have to do the job that they were put on the board. That's my recommendation. That's my motion on this matter, so we can put it for the rest of the evening.
You were going in and out. So are you saying that you would like, you want to make a motion that there be a presentation to the Finance Committee?
Right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Madam Chair.
Of what we just were presented, the corridor study?
That's because it dealt with $500,000 budget.
It is that. I do agree.
Yeah, so we would know, you need just to know what the motion is and who made it.
Annie, go ahead.
Annie Coleman, but you put, oh.
What'd you say, Danny?
I need to take the motion.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I move that the report on whatever the title is, that contract amendment before we
Oh my goodness, I wish he could. Can you type it in the chat?
If anyone knows the intent of his motion, they may want to state that.
I think what he's saying is that he wants to make a motion because because of the $500 budget that's on this amendment, that he wants to make a motion for there to be a presentation to the Finance Committee about how the funds are being allocated for this amendment. Is that correct, Danny?
Okay, let me try this one more time. We have before us contract amendment, Southern Western PD Association. I move that that line item on our agenda, quote, contract amendment hyphen Southern and Western PD initiation, end quote, be forwarded to our finance committee for review. I still need to type it?
No. Did you catch that? Does he have a second?
I second that.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded that we will move this Southern and Western Corridors Amendment to the Finance Committee for review for the funds of it. I'm going to call each name. Please state your vote by saying aye, yay or nay, or aye or no. Nathan Spencer?
Aye.
Karen Ringe?
Nay.
Daniel Coleman?
Aye.
Morris Cook?
Aye.
Brian Burnett?
Aye.
And Tallulah Omokaye, I vote aye as well. So motion has been passed to move this to the Finance Committee for further review. Of course, leading up to further presentations to the board. All right, it looks like we're at the end of our agenda. Are there any other staff updates, David?
Yes, we had a few items to run through. We'll bring back up the presentation quickly. And I did want to show everyone, this is a graph that shows our ridership really from the early stages of our pandemic through last week. As you can see, we are beginning to trend ridership trends back up as things open up and people are returning to work. That's why we instated our regular service schedule, as we knew that these trends would, result in increased ridership. We'll continue to follow this ridership on a daily basis and be providing updates to the board as we hopefully will see our ridership levels return to some form of near normalcy as hopefully things get better and better. Again, I will think positive. One thing that we also wanted to let everyone know is that Go Raleigh received 10,000 masks from the U.S. Department of Transportation, as well as the Federal Transit Administration. Specifically, our notification came out of our Region 4 office in Atlanta, and we were very excited to receive these masks. First line of masks certainly went to all employees. These are reusable masks that can be washed and used over and over again. After we distributed masks to all of our frontline workers and personnel at Go Raleigh and Go Raleigh Access, we will be distributing these masks to our riders at locations throughout our network, or transit network. We'll have, I think, certainly, we did not use 10,000 masks with our employees. Total count of employees is about 350 to 375, and I think we potentially put maybe a couple of masks aside. But needless to say, we should have a good, 5 to 8. I don't know the exact number, so my apologies, but we should have a good 5,000 to 8,000 masks that we can distribute to the general public, and we'll begin working on that in the near future. Again, these are reusable, and again, we're happy that those are available, and that the U.S. DOT and Federal Transit Administration made those available through CARES Act funding. I wanted to also announce Go Raleigh's 2 statewide awards. The City of Raleigh's transit system was recipient of the Transit System of the Year. And certainly that comes from a number of activities and that we highlighted, capital as well as operating for the year that we just are finishing up right now, fiscal year 20. So again, just congratulations on that, from operating to a lot of our work that's gone into capital and other projects, new shelters, new buses, just lots of things that are going on that's very exciting. I certainly would say that we probably had some opportunity that some other jurisdictions do not have. And the fact that the Wake Transit Plan obviously has a very aggressive schedule for us to implement capital projects and some very quality transit capital projects at that. The next is we also won the Transit System Year of the Award for safety. That one is incredibly important to I think, and hopefully everyone will understand that that's based on true data metrics that are collected and reported annually. So that's not a group of people that sit around the table and say, we think that this system did a great job being safe. This is based on metrics on preventable accidents per 100,000 miles, as well as some other data metrics that are in that overall process. Mr. Morris Cook certainly could probably provide a long list of data metrics as it relates to safety. But I just wanted to certainly commend all of the employees at Go Raleigh for this award. This does not happen by one group of employees. This does not happen by chance or really, again, by someone saying, we think that you're doing a great job. This becomes because of true data and day-to-day effort to be safe by everyone that walks onto the property and comes back to that property every day. So again, congratulations, Go Raleigh, on that award, statewide award.
Yes, congratulations. Congratulations to Go Raleigh, the team. Like, I know it's a hard fought effort. So that actually makes us feel good about all the time that we spend and the work that we spend here also, to see that, that it's actually paying it forward. So our drivers are amazing. Our operators are amazing, engineers. So thank you for all the hard work you do. And we'll be looking for those data matrices, Morris, on the next call. So, no pressure for that long list.
So with that, we did have, I'll completely leave this up to you, Madam Chair, if you would like to see the videos. Let me make sure that the videos would be available if we wanted to see them. And we have some social media videos that have been pushed out regarding social distancing, wearing your mask, wash your hands, just all being good stewards of the new environment we're in. And it's really, a lot of times I think about these things, and I'm not a big fan of wearing a mask, but a lot of times, or not a lot of times, when I go to a grocery store, things like that, I want others to feel comfortable. Now, sometimes it's not about me, it's about others, because if you don't have that mask on, you can actually see some people get tense, and I don't like that feeling. So I think that really it is being responsible and making sure that you're not just doing it for yourself, but you're really doing it for others as well. So that's what these videos represent. If you got maybe 4 minutes, we can run through these videos very quickly that we'll be putting on a variety of social media outlets.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Back to the first 3 awards that we won yesterday, I want to make sure that we understand that the board voted in those. There were 3 things that we wanted for the routing. Decided to go with compressed gas and with changing out of 5 people riding the bus at a particular stop at a shelter, and I just the members of the board that checked those items through this board needs to get recognition, our ability to get things done. Yes, we have staff. Yes, we have contract workers, but we also have a dynamic board that pushed items through. Because had we not approved them, they would not have been done. So I just want to make sure that while we're patting everybody on the back, we ought to pat our own selves because we did a great job. And then number 2, before everybody walks out before the end of the meeting, I hope that under the performance reports, items 8, which we used to get hard copies of them in the online version or the version that we have now, I'll become a victim of the current conditions that we're undergoing, because the measure of what the data metrics that David just alluded to our performance are captured in income statement, operating statistics, evaluation by route, yada, yada, yada. And I don't see them a part of the backup that we have. And I'm just wondering where they are and do we get them, because we used to get them. And I'm querying you on that so you can see what's up with that. Thank you very much.
No problem. What is it that you don't have access to that you wanted?
On our agenda, we have what's called performance reports, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, which we used to have, which are the income statements. You know, then it allowed us to look through the stuff.
That we do have that. We have the income statement and the operating statistics. Those.
Page 27 through 54 are the statistics and operating statements.
Yeah, it's on the full agenda that CJ sent out on the 15th.
I don't have it in the thing that I'm looking at. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. All right, we're ready for the videos.
Thank you.
COVID-19 has reminded us of COVID-19 has reminded us of what our parents taught us. Keep your hands to yourself. So Raleigh has made this easy. Maintain 6 feet apart from other passengers to protect yourself, others, and us. Go Raleigh buses allow us up to 16 passengers to comply with social distancing practices.
COVID-19 has reminded us of what our parents taught us. Cover your mouth when you cough. We are wearing masks. You should too. Protect your fellow passengers and us. Cover your mouth and nose by wearing a facial covering. And please, don't ride the bus if you are sick.
COVID-19 has reminded us of what our parents taught us. Wash your hands. Go Raleigh is helping us keep our hands clean. Board the bus using the rear door. Sanitize your hands when you enter. We have suspended fare to limit direct contact.
COVID-19 has reminded us of what our parents taught us. Cleaning and organizing is a practice, not a project. Cleaning has always been a practice at Go Raleigh. It happens weekly, daily, and hourly. Go Raleigh facilities and buses are cleaned, fueled, and checked as part of our standard operations. We also spray and wipe all high-touch areas, deep clean, fog, and sanitize frequently for your safety and ours.
COVID-19 has reminded us of what our parents taught us. Don't forget to say thank you. The city has changed as we know it, but Go Raleigh keeps going. Go Raleigh can't quit. Our team is still working hard every single day. We are essential frontline workers and those in need of transportation around the city all day and every night.
The Go Raleigh team keeps doing what we do every day. We keep our city going. We would like to thank you for trusting us during this time.
That was nice. Where are those videos airing?
They will be on social media, Facebook,
That was nice.
Other outlets
Where are
as
those
well.
videos airing?
Twitter. They will
Instagram.
be on social media, Facebook,
That was nice.
other outlets
Where are
as
those
well.
videos airing?
Twitter. They will be
Instagram.
on social media,
That
Facebook,
was nice.
other outlets
Where are
as
those
well.
videos airing?
Can you hear me? Twitter. They will be on social media, Facebook, other outlets
Where are
as
those
well.
videos airing?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Twitter. They will be on social media, Facebook, other outlets
Where are
as
those
well.
videos airing?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Twitter. They will be on social media, Facebook, other outlets as well. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Twitter. They will be on social media, Facebook, other outlets as well. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Twitter. They will be on social media, Facebook, other outlets as well. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Twitter. They will be on social media, Facebook, other outlets as well. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Twitter. They will be on social media, Facebook, other outlets as well. I'm sorry. Do you have it? Are you looking?
Lord.
Well, it made it through the.
Ooh.
That was rough. That was rough.
Ooh. I never got
Did it stop?
my own voice. So many. All right, I want to just call this meeting to order.
That concludes our staff report.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, out of fear of getting the wrath of the feedback, are we able to do concluding remarks and member statements?
Yes. Okay. Before we conclude, if there are any concluding remarks before we close.
I have one. This is Nathan Spencer. Myself and our chair and Brian had sent a letter to the Marie Parker, general manager of the of Go Raleigh's bus operations, asking some questions with regards to how buses were ended up being used for moving police and riot gear, and then also what sort of protection was being given to those drivers during and after. We are still waiting for a response from the agency. and we would like one. On top of that, I have, I'd like to introduce a resolution to prevent that from happening again. That will keep Go Raleigh buses from being used in that manner. If that's if that's all right with you, Chair, I'd like to read what this resolution is and put it on for a vote.
Okay.
So the resolution that I have is, whereas the Raleigh Police Department used Go Raleigh buses beginning May 30th to transport police officers to front lines of Black Lives Matter protests in riot gear, where they clashed with demonstrators and fired tear gas and rubber bullets. Whereas 2 Go Raleigh buses were significantly damaged, endangering operators. And in one case, one operator felt concerned enough by the damage and spread of tear gas that within the bus that they returned to the operations center. Whereas operators were not provided with the same protective equipment, that police were wearing, nor offered counseling and paid time off to recover. Whereas Go Raleigh's operator workforce is largely African American and was asked to put their lives and their buses into action against a group of citizens protesting the chronic police brutality and murder of other African Americans at the hands of police, with no regards to their mental well-being and safety. Whereas the board of this board of the Raleigh Transit Authority believes that Black Lives Matter and that the mistreatment, abuse, and killing of African Americans by the police must end. Therefore, the Raleigh Transit Authority prohibits the use of Go Raleigh vehicles, property, assets to be used by the Raleigh Police Department or any other law enforcement entity without a court order for the purposes of transporting law enforcement to counter protesters practicing their First Amendment rights against racism, police brutality, and other forms of discrimination. Furthermore, the Raleigh Transit Authority prohibits the use of Go Raleigh vehicles, property, or assets to be used by the Raleigh Police Department or any other law enforcement entity without a court order for the purposes of taking demonstrators into custody. And lastly, furthermore, the Raleigh Transit Authority asks Raleigh's Mayor, Marianne Baldwin, and the Raleigh City Council to affirm this resolution prohibiting the use of Go Raleigh vehicles, property, or assets to be used by the Raleigh Police Department or any other law enforcement in accordance with above. I'm entering that into as an offer to stop this. As we've seen, there have been ongoing protests. This is not going to stop until we continue being present, all of us. And I don't want to take risks the opportunity that our system buses and our operators are going to be put in danger at the will of police to move riot gear around. That's not their purpose, and that's not their place.
I agree wholeheartedly. I thank you for writing that resolution, Nathan. I second your resolution. I would like this to be something that is presented to the mayor and city council at their July meeting for them to for their endorsement.
I agree with that, and we can get onto the public comment period, I think, with that.
Exactly.
Morris Cook, do we as a body even have the authority to be able to do this? One, David.
So there's two different thought processes here. So there's one that, as a body, you can say that we collectively want to request council to endorse this policy. And so certainly I think that that is a clear path. Whether you could do that independently, I would have to do research with the attorney's office to clarify that. But certainly as a body, the Transit Authority can collectively vote by majority and say this is a request of the majority of our body, and this is what we're requesting of council. You would have that authority feel confident.
And two, I just want to clarify some misinformation that was in there. It was said that there was significant damage to the vehicles. The vehicle sustained less than 0.36%, 0.036% of the value of the vehicle in damage.
Okay.
So how much would it cost to fix the damage that was made?
Less than $3,000.
We're not talking about like peanuts. I mean, I hear you. You know, it's a small percentage of the value.
The misinformation that's going out as far as there was severe damage or a huge amount of damage.
What did that line say, Nathan?
That line is, whereas 2 Go Raleigh buses were significantly damaged, endangering the operators. And in one case, one operator felt concerned enough by the damage and spread tear gas within the bus that they returned to the operations center.
So when we're talking damage, are we talking body damage? Are we talking poisonous fumes in the bus? That's damage. That's significant. I got tear gas. That's not fun. So I think the word significant is relative. Now, if you want to pick another word to use, because maybe significant to you or to others may read extreme or catastrophic, or, you know, the majority of the bus was damaged. But what we're saying is that there was damage. There was damage to the operator who felt in danger enough to have to hurry up and go back because there was tear gas in the bus. And while
we never had an operator to do that.
You said, I'm sorry?
We never had an operator to feel unsafe to come back.
There was no operators that came back to the station because they felt unsafe?
That's what I heard from David. David reported to me that there was an operator who came back. David?
Yeah. Also, just make sure everybody says who's speaking when you're speaking. That'd be great.
David, was there an operator who said that was there an operator that came back because there was tear gas in the bus?
That was my understanding, but that is the reason that we have not responded with the letter yet. We want to make sure that all of the details are completely correct there. So I'll certainly have to follow back up on that.
So we also want to Lulupe, I'm okay speaking. Nathan, we do know that there were possibly some people, just from our past experience, who may not feel comfortable putting themselves out there, saying that they were afraid of something that they were told to do. And we don't want to put them in any danger or have any issues.
They were volunteers, so I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
I don't want anybody to say, even if they volunteered to do it, maybe they did in danger.
Safety's number one. I agree.
Right, and maybe
definitely.
they did feel like they were in danger or afraid and won't feel like comfortable repeating that over and over again for whatever reasons, for their employment reasons or otherwise. So can we just amend the wording, Nathan? I think overall, the spirit and the purpose and the spirit of the proclamation that you wrote is important. And I want us to move forward with a vote on once the wording is fixed, or maybe, amended to make sure that it's even with everyone else, that we do go forward with presenting this to City Council as something that we hope that they endorse. So
I think that's perfectly Right. I completely agree with that.
Okay. So can we have, I don't know if everybody on the council had an opportunity to see a copy of the proclamation that you wrote. So if you don't mind adjusting the verbiage and sending it out. And if anybody has any words or anything that they feel like is off, we can converse on it to make sure that the verbiage is right. Hopefully we can have this done by Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like if anybody has any problem with the verbiage, it goes out today. You have an opportunity to, let's figure out the areas of erroneousness or the areas that we can't, that are subjective and move forward with it. Karen?
This is Karen Ringe speaking. Isn't basically the issue here, certainly we want drivers to be safe and not be tear gassed or subjected to that, but isn't the basic issue of whether or not the city can authorize using city buses for a police activity?
That is yes. That is the overall energy of it.
If there's damage or not damage, I would think the bigger issue is should those buses be used for police activity when we're dealing with protesters?
So can we just remove that piece, that line?
Absolutely. This is Nathan. I absolutely agree with that, and I would say that it's a matter of not just the assets themselves, but also the drivers.
Right.
So yes, we can.
And even if it's a measure of saying, whereas drivers feel uncomfortable, that their personal or physical safety, because they were volunteers, they weren't told to do it. So if a driver feels uncomfortable with their physical safety, that then they can return back instead of saying that somebody did feel uncomfortable and did return, because that might be hard for us to prove whether or not that person wants to stand by. That's how they felt. So if we can just remove that line or, amend that, I'm for it. I would like to make a motion to accept it. Barring that there will be a revised edition that Nathan will edit and send out to us this week. We will have until, I know that the city council meets on the 7th. So I would like to just hash this out, hopefully by Friday. If anybody has any, by close of business Friday, if anybody has any objection to it. If not, then we move forward, sending it, Nathan, to David on Monday for this to go forward to city council. Does that sound fair to everyone? Maybe raise your hand if it does sound fair.
Yeah. It's definitely something that needs to get pushed over the goal line. Yeah.
Thank you.
You may want to do a roll call on that if you actually made that as a motion.
All right, I'll do a roll call.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to do a roll call really quick. Please answer yay or nay or aye or nay to state let your voice be heard. Nathan Spencer?
Yeah.
And the motion, I'm sorry, but the motion was?
The motion is to, go ahead, Nathan, you make the motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the proposed resolution with amended language to be finalized and sent out to the city council by Monday.
A second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. Let me go back to the list. All right. Nathan Spencer?
I vote aye.
Karen Ringe?
Aye.
Danny Coleman?
Aye.
Morris Cook?
Aye.
Brian Burnett?
Aye.
And Tululepe Omokaye, I vote aye as well. So it's been moved, the motion has been passed for the amendment to be made to the proclamation by Monday to City Council for their approval and endorsement.
And Nathan, this is Daniel. Have you been talking to the risk management people in the city, asking them how does risk management look at view of transit being used by police in those types of operations? And how does the liability work in that situation? Risk management people might have some ammunition for you. Way of you trying to push this.
This is Nathan. I have not spoken to the risk management or emergency management folks.
not emergency management, risk management. The city of Raleigh is self-insured. So if there's any liability, it goes to their risk management department. Don't get confused with emergency management and risk management. Okay, there are two distinct divisions.
Oof.
Okay. Well, we can look at it, but I think that we're going to let the city council see the resolution and deal with it from that point.
All right. Are there any other adds to the agenda? Any final comments from the committee? I mean, from the authority?
Before you leave today.
All right, thank you. So thank you all for your time again. Thank you for all your hard work.
Madam Chair, I did have one item.
All right.
All it was we may want to determine whether you wanted a July meeting. Due to all of your votes today, we do not anticipate any action items in July. July has historically been the only month that the Transit Authority would take off, if it does take off a month. But at this time, we do not have any pressing items. You did approve the required items today. So you could take the month of July off. That is kind of a tough month for us sometimes to have a quorum. But again, that is totally up to the pleasure of the board. We will be here either way. So, but again, we did want to offer that as we do not see any pressing items that would need action in July.
All right, well, I will leave that to the board for a vote. So we'll do a quick vote on that. The question is if whether or not, let's go with if we want to meet in July. So the vote is whether you want to meet in July. You say aye if you do, or nay if you do not. Okay.
Before we vote to Lillipay, this is Karen Renge. Is it my understanding, my cat is attacking me. Is it my understanding that if we don't meet in July, will it hold anything up for the staff moving forward with current projects and decisions?
It's my understanding that it will not, because we made all the voting that we need to do in this meeting. So the July month is the month that we normally take off. So we've kind of prepared ourselves with our votes up to this point so that it won't hold them up. Is that correct?
For example, we had talked about if we're going to do it, if we need to assess public outreach, can that presentation wait till August? I mean, that's fine with me if it's okay to wait that long. I don't know what the timing is for community outreach.
Will it throw off the timing that Mila was talking about with community outreach with the corridors if we don't meet in July?
So it will take us the month of July to route contract. So we would not even have a notice to proceed until sometime in August.
Oh, okay.
So you'll let us know.
Well, let me back up on that. We like to move as quickly as we can, but realistically, it takes about 30 days to execute a contract.
Okay.
Oh, we have another visitor. So cute. All right, so we're going to take a quick vote. The vote is whether or not you want to meet in July. So aye or nay. All right, Nathan?
Nay.
Karen?
Nay.
Daniel?
Okay, no. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Morris?
Nay.
Ryan?
Nay.
We're going to ask Sarah too. Sarah, you want to meet in July?
Nay.
I'm going to vote nay as well. Absolutely nay. So that we will not be meeting in July for the RTA. So it gives us a vacation.
Mr. Robert Owens is out there as well.
Oh yeah, that's right, Mr. Owens. Mr. Owens, would you like to?
He's been a kind of quiet.
I've been speaking to the chair frequently, but I don't think she could hear me.
Oh.
I'm okay with either meeting or not meeting in July, but I have another question. So could you come back to me, Madam Chair?
Oh, yeah, we can talk to you now. What's your question?
I have not received minutes of the May meeting. Are they still in process, or did I miss something somehow?
David?
They are still in process. Our apologies there. We'll get those out just as soon as they're available. We won't wait for the meeting to get those out.
Okay, fine. I just wanted to make sure that I had been missed on somebody's list or something. Thank you.
No problem.
Today, Robert, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. We've been dealing with a lot of technical difficulties.
I'm sorry about that. I'm going to see if somebody can help me figure out why I could not get on online today. I'm with you totally by telephone.
Okay, well, hopefully we can get that done by our August meeting. Rock out the kinks.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said maybe we can meet face to face in August.
Yeah, we might.
That would be wonderful.
That might even be
wonderful. With covered faces.
Face to covered face. That might be an option. We have to see. But definitely we will hopefully be able to have a little smoother transition of communication come August, one way or the other.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, thank you all. Are there any other add-ins before we conclude our meeting?
Thank you, Tallulah Faye.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you for logging in. Thank you for all of your hard work, all of your dedication on all the work that we're doing. Thank you for your buy-in and your feedback. Please stay safe and enjoy our vacation until we meet again in August. Have a great one. I conclude this meeting at 5:38 p.m.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Back in there.